this. We saw all these people running in the opposite direction, being pushed back by police. We had came out after those shots had been fired, but this was obviously the moment at that time that the police were just trying to expel as many people from the area as possible for their safety, but also to kind of clear the area. And then they were parted by police for a silver Jaguar, which came right round us, and Sky cameras caught the picture, and it appears to have been the Prime Minister who had been evacuated from.
Let's show these pictures, Neil, as we're chatting. There are some vehicles coming past us now, and the vehicle, in fact, we're just being told by an officer that they're going to stop the traffic for this vehicle. Not sure what it is. We'll keep an eye on it. Certainly heavily tooled up police officers, it would appear. And Mark White is with us. Mark, I don't know if you can see these pictures. Talk us about it.
Kay, yes, those are the CTSFOs. You can see that on the back of his body armour there, the counter-terrorism specialist firearms officers. Those are the officers, the elite of the SCO-19 armed unit at the Metropolitan Police. They are specially trained to deal with terrorist-related incidents. Now, some of those officers have been inside the Houses of Parliament. Indeed, they're still inside, Kay, carrying out a systematic search, room by room, of that building to make sure that there is no one still inside there that they believe may have been involved in the incident. Those officers, we don't know where they are relocating to at the moment, but clearly they're moving away from the Houses of Parliament. But they are trained to deal with these kind of incidents. I was just at the weekend there on the River Thames with these officers as they were practicing boarding a pleasure cruise boat in a scenario dealing with hostages there. So they regularly train for these types of incidents, and the fact that they've been brought in underlines the seriousness of what has already been described as a major incident by London Ambulance Service, with one woman dead, a number of other people, we're told, with catastrophic injuries.
Okay, for now, thanks very much indeed, Mark. We're just going to look at some images, I think, with Jane and also with Colin, as there's more police activity here at the scene, about 100 metres or so away from where one of those terrorist incidents happened. What are you showing to us, Colin and Jane?
Kay, we're trying to pick out as judiciously as possible what's appropriate to use. As you could imagine, many of our viewers could imagine too, the internet in particular awash with images. This is not just the political and media hub of London, but just a place where hundreds of holidaymakers, many of them, of course, equipped with mobile phones with cameras, would be right now. So there are a great number of pictures in circulation right now. We're trying to sift through those pictures in such a way that we can show you what was clearly a dynamic and dramatic unfolding situation on Westminster Bridge, whilst respecting the usual proprieties as well. So we're trying to strike a balance, and I hope you'll appreciate that we've sought to do that. If you are of a disposition that might find them objectionable, this might be the appropriate moment to look away for a couple of minutes as we take you through these. This, a particularly disturbing image showing somebody who may have leapt over the wall or been hit over the wall. That's the Thames. The river itself, just to the top of that picture. This is, if you know the area, this is that part of Westminster Bridge that effectively is adjacent to the Palace of Westminster itself, almost built into the foundations of the Palace of Westminster. This on the bridge itself, by this time, and we are showing images before the paramedics start to arrive, at this stage they have St Thomas's Hospital, teaching hospital, major accident emergency unit, literally within metres of the Palace of Westminster, and some of those A&E paramedics, they could almost run. They could almost run from A&E. They wouldn't need to get in their ambulances, though of course they are there in profusion, as you'd expect as well. Let's show you some more images which have been sent in to us and which we've gone through as well. Let's show you instead the live pictures we can show you now, showing a much quieter scene, in a sense, from Westminster Bridge. The tube station has been closed. As Kay was saying a few moments ago, the London Eye is locked down as well, with people still effectively trapped inside some of those pods.
Lost comms? Lost comms?
Yeah. So let's just remind you what has happened in Westminster. If you're just joining us here on Sky News today, we are hearing that at least one person has died, a woman has died, and a number of others have been hurt, including some with catastrophic injuries, according to a medic at St Thomas's Hospital. It was just after 2:30 this afternoon when a vehicle ran along Westminster Bridge. Some reports say it mounted the pavement. A number of people were hit. We have had one eyewitness who described seeing a body in the River Thames below. We have just shown you some distressing images, including somebody who appears to have either fallen or jumped from the bridge as well. So a number of injuries, and one woman died, we believe, on Westminster Bridge. That vehicle then, it is thought, continued into Parliament Square, where the Houses of Parliament and the House of Lords are situated, past Portcullis House, where MPs have their offices. It crashed into the railings outside Portcullis House. Other eyewitnesses say that they saw a man leave the vehicle armed with what appeared to be a knife, enter the perimeter of Parliament into the grounds, where a policeman, we believe, was stabbed and shots were fired, and the air ambulance has taken people from that location as well. That is the latest information that we had. This part of London is now in lockdown, tube services suspended, the roads closed, and people being urged to stay away at the time being.
So, as I was saying, communication quite challenging here at the moment. An awful lot of police activity, helicopters in the air. We've seen armed police officers with balaclavas who have been moving around the area. We've seen the fire service head in within the last few moments as well. Robert Nisbet is here. And Robert, we were speaking just a few moments ago about this silver Jaguar, or silver vehicle, that was whisked away very soon after the incident.
Going extremely fast, the car, and it parted all of us and the people who are running away from the scene, and someone went, "That's the Prime Minister, that's the Prime Minister," and we all kind of trained our...
Stand by. Scotland Yard to make a statement in 15 minutes is what we're being told. Scotland Yard just a little bit further along the river than where we are, to make a statement in 15 minutes. They've already told us that this is terror-related, as you would anticipate. Keep going.
So all of our cameras were kind of trained on this silver Jaguar as it sped away, and it went down just one of these side streets at extreme speed, and that, we understand, was the Prime Minister being evacuated extremely rapidly from the building.
Prime Minister's question time today, of course.
It was indeed, and many of the MPs still in the chamber. Obviously, Wednesday is a very busy parliamentary day. A number of them were told that they had to stay where they were, in effect, not so much lockdown, but they were listening to what was going on and watching Sky News and television around inside the House of Parliament to try to ascertain what had happened. But some of them heard the shots in the Old Palace Yard, and obviously knew that it was a major...
For people who don't know what Old Palace Yard is geographically.
Yeah, it's inside the compound of the Palace of Westminster, just the other side of the railings from where the tourists are taking their pictures. So literally just over the railings inside the Palace of Westminster compound. So very close to the road and very close to where this trail of carnage had been left by the car as it went up onto the pavement and then eventually ended up crashed into the railings.
Now, I was chatting to the political editor of The Sun just a few moments ago, Tom Newton-Dunn. We'll be hearing from him shortly. He's found himself outside the court and desperately trying to get back in, obviously, to file his story. But he was saying that there is a very obvious weak spot, if you will, as far as security is concerned at the Palace of Westminster, because the gates need to be open and closed all the time for vehicles to go about their business.
That's right. I mean, at other access points around the Palace of Westminster, it is incredibly secure. You have to show your pass even to get anywhere near the security gates. But at that particular ingress and egress point, that is where MPs and Lords drive their cars in. Some drive themselves, some are driven in there. And at the moment, it's kind of a metal barrier that is pulled back and the car goes in, and then the metal barrier is
on a wheel,
forward.
isn't it?
On a wheel, that's right. And they shout at tourists and workers, stand back, and we all stand on the side of the pavement, and then when the car's in, everybody walks past. And to someone who was very security conscious, they may look at that and say, that's quite an anachronism. We don't know whether it was actually through that or whether it was through the next gate with turnstiles just down from there. That's a little confused. Both of them link on to the Old Palace Yard, but clearly this is something they're going to be looking at once all the dust has settled on this incident.
What we also don't know at this stage is it's two separate incidents, is it not? It's two separate incidents, but we don't know whether the person that has been shot by police or apprehended by police within Palace Yard, where you described where he was stopped, if it's the same person that was the driver of the vehicle. We don't know at this stage.
Or whether it was a passenger in the car that jumped out. I mean, one of the eyewitnesses we spoke to very soon after here on Sky News, a gentleman called Alan Parry, who works for Sky Sports News, he said he saw a man leap out of the car, suggested he may have been in his 30s and 40s, and just saw him running. He didn't see where he ran to, but clearly the man who crashed the car got out of it very quickly. We don't know whether he went then into the Palace of Westminster.
Stand by if you would, please. We're talking about security here in Cordons. It's been quite challenged to get from where our offices are in West London as close as we have done so far. Police ticker tape is everywhere, as you can imagine. There's a lot of people wandering around quite bewildered, not really sure what's going on. Within the Palace of Westminster itself, there is a lockdown there. Many MPs still inside the chamber of the House of Commons where they had gathered for Prime Minister's question time. They're there for the foreseeable future until they're told by the security services that it is safe to leave. This is still very much an active terrorist situation. They do not know what else might happen. As a result, they're going to keep those MPs where they are until they have the all clear. The same for tourists as well. Very busy part of the city as far as tourism is concerned. The Palace of Westminster here, Big Ben, many come here, Westminster Bridge to see up and down the river. And then just across the river, that's where you'll see, and I'm sure many of you have been there already, the London Eye. Those pods that take about 35 minutes or something like that to go around. People are stuck on those at the moment. They are not being allowed off, again, for obvious reasons that I've just explained to you. Alistair Bunkle is there for us, our defence correspondent. As we hear more sirens here, Alistair, talk to us about what's happening where you are.
Yeah, Case, we've relocated, a couple of hundred metres long.
All right, you are watching our sister network, Sky News in London. Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith. You are watching a terror incident as it is being treated by authorities in London unfold. You are seeing the breaking news. Eyewitnesses are being talked to. What we have learned so far is that there were shots fired at the Parliament complex. A police officer was stabbed. The assailant in all of this, as you're being watching all of this unfold, and it is being described, has reportedly been shot. And that was the very latest that was reported according to the leader of the House of Commons. The London police, and I will reiterate this, is treating this as a terror incident until we know otherwise, was their exact wording. The scene on the Westminster Bridge, as you continue to watch the images there, multiple people we saw were lying on the ground. Some were reportedly heavily bleeding. We have now gotten a medical report on some of those victims. One woman is now reported dead. That is according to a doctor on the ground there in London. Multiple others have catastrophic injuries. There were reports of the car carrying the assailant mowing down those pedestrians on the Westminster Bridge as it approached the Parliament complex. And that was when we had reports of shots fired and this man running with a knife, according to some eyewitnesses on the scene. The Parliament complex is in lockdown. The Prime Minister has been safely evacuated. The State Department, as I bring it back here home, State Department is closely following this. They've just released a statement. The President, we are told, President Donald Trump has been briefed on this. He called it big news. That's all we've heard so far. And as we bring it back to New York City, we're also being told that they are increasing their security presence here at some key places. So you are watching this terror incident unfold. All of this is being done with sources and eyewitnesses on our sister network there in London, Sky News. And by the way, we're also waiting for Scotland Yard to make a statement. Let's go back and listen to Sky in London.
What did you do? Did you run away? Did you stay and help?
I was pretty traumatized by it because it's the first time I witnessed something like that. And I could just stand still. I was just traumatized by it. I couldn't do anything about it. I really wanted to help the people, but I was myself not in the right state of mind.
Some people have told us they heard gunshots. Other people say they didn't hear gunshots. Did you?
I didn't hear any gunshots from where I was, but I really don't know anything about the gunshots.
And the condition of some of the people who were on the bridge who had been hit by the car?
Horrible, probably. I think some of them might even have died on the spot, and some of them must be severely injured. But it was a horrible incident altogether.
Okay, Yuvraj, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, just quickly before I hand back to you, just give you some indication of around here. I have to say it is a lot of, I suppose it's a combination of people probably starting to return home from work as we head towards 5 o'clock in the evening. A lot of tourists around here, as is the case every day of the year, whatever the weather, and those who are waiting to get off the London Eye, who have been kept on the London Eye. Some of the emergency services are actually in the London Eye at the moment. It's obviously been sealed off for anyone who wanting to go on it now. The police are there, and one by one they are bringing people off it, but very, very slowly indeed. Assuming that people on the Eye do know what is going on, I don't think anybody would have any complaints. And a police helicopter, as I'm sure you can hear, flying overhead. The only last thing I would add, by way of an update, is having spoken to my security contacts, for them as well, this is a very fluid and ongoing situation as they are trying to assess and trying to piece together exactly what is going on, using their intelligence sources, but also things like eyewitness accounts.
Okay, Alistair, for now, thank you. We can hear that police helicopter as well. You're about 100 metres or so, maybe a couple of 100 metres away from where we are. Don't forget, we are waiting for a police update. Just off the road there, guys, the police are coming through. We are waiting for a police update, and that police update is likely to be within the next 10 minutes or so, is what we're hearing from Scotland Yard. They have already told us, though, that it is being treated as a terrorist incident for now. Whether it's one incident or two, and whether they are linked, hopefully we'll hear more from the police in around about 10 minutes' time. We've just got this still that we'd like to show to you. You can see there's a man on the ground. Just looking at those images, a man on the ground being surrounded by police officers. As far as the geography of that shot is concerned, not really sure, but the cobbles might suggest that it is in Old Palace Yard as we hear more sirens. That's an ambulance heading just out of the direction. His legs are bare, as you can see from that image, and we are anticipating at this stage that I'm afraid to have to tell you that according to Sky sources within the last few moments, as we continue to look at that image of who is potentially a man that tried to stab a police officer inside the Palace of Westminster, or within the confines of the Palace of Westminster, that two people are now reportedly dead as a result of this terror incident in central London. Mark White is with us. Mark, several other people injured, but the latest we're hearing, according to Sky sources, is that at least two people have been confirmed dead. What more do we know?
Yeah, a source just confirming that to me in the last couple of minutes, Kay. Information that he has that now two people have died as a result of the incident that has unfolded outside the palaces of Westminster and on Westminster Bridge. Now, in terms of that second fatality, we know that the first fatality was a woman who died. We were told by a doctor at St Thomas's Hospital that there are other people that are being treated there with catastrophic injuries. What we don't know with regard to the second fatality is whether that is someone who was struck by the vehicle on Westminster Bridge and also outside the palaces of Westminster. We should add that there are three separate scenes here, Kay. There is Westminster Bridge, where up to a dozen people, we understand, were knocked down. Then there is outside the palaces of Westminster, where this 4x4 Hyundai vehicle smashed into the main railings there. A number of other people injured there. And then in the palaces of Westminster itself, just in the Old Palace Yard, a police officer was stabbed and the alleged attacker was shot by armed officers who were nearby the palaces of Westminster at the time. We don't know if the latest fatality that is being reported to us was anyone connected with the two other incidents away from Westminster Bridge. What we do know is that in about 5-6 minutes time from now, Commander B.J. Harrington, senior officer at Scotland Yard, I was with him just at the weekend on a counter-terrorism exercise on the River Thames, will be making a statement in which he's expected to give a bit more detail on the unfolding incident and perhaps shed a bit more light on the injuries suffered by that police officer. We believe initial reports suggest he was seriously injured, but at this stage we have no further details than that, except he was seriously injured and taken to St Thomas's Hospital. But the information that a source has just told me with regard to the overall number of dead and injured at the moment is that there are two confirmed fatalities, and multiple people that have been injured. Some of those, according to an earlier source, a doctor at St Thomas's Hospital, have suffered catastrophic injuries.
Okay, for now, thank you, Mark. I know you'll continue to update us as and when you get more. We are expecting more from Scotland Yard very shortly. Indeed, they have already confirmed that this is being treated as a terrorist incident. We've heard from Mark there that Sky sources telling us that 2 people are now confirmed dead. One of them, a woman. We'll get more information and update you on that. We can also tell you that people are still trapped on the London Eye, which is just across the river from, you actually go across Westminster Bridge in order to get to the London Eye. People are being kept in those pods for their own safety. We are being told that they will be taken off one at a time as and when it becomes safe for them. Looking at Old Palace Yard as well, and we believe that that is where one man was tackled to the ground by the police. And Robert is with us still. Robert, so this guy who was in Old Palace Yard, we're looking at these images now, we don't know who he is, we don't know whether he was in the vehicle, but we do know that he was stopped by the police and he had a knife and he potentially attacked a police officer.
That's right. I mean, from what we hear from the eyewitnesses that we have spoken to, he appeared to be in either his 30s or his 40s, of Asian appearance. As you say, once he got into Old Palace Yard, that is when he appears to have attacked the police officers, stabbed him with a knife, and again, eyewitnesses saying between 7 and 8 inches, so a long bladed knife. Then he was shot by the colleagues of the injured police officer, and we have now, of course, mobile phone footage of that man apparently lying on the ground in Old Palace Yard. But who he is, whether he was working with somebody else, whether he was the man at the wheel of the car...
This is Fox News, live coverage of the attack near London's Parliament. I'm Sandra Smith in New York. There are still a lot of details about this attack that are not known. It is being treated right now as a terror incident by London authorities until they know otherwise. What we have learned so far is that shots were fired within the Parliament complex. A police officer was stabbed. The assailant that traveled across the Westminster Bridge and reportedly mowed down pedestrians there and killed one woman. We are now learning a second person has now been pronounced dead in this proposed terror incident. The London police treating this as a terror incident. Westminster Bridge, the scene there, multiple people lying on the ground, some heavily bleeding. Still not exactly clear what happened there, but we are learning that the assailant traveled across the bridge, approached Parliament, got out of the car reportedly with a knife. Shots were fired. We're still learning a lot more about this. The Parliament complex has been put into lockdown. The Prime Minister has been safely evacuated from the area. Here at home, the State Department has issued a statement saying that they are closely following this. There's no reason to believe that we need to increase terror threat levels here at home, but they are monitoring it, and the President, Donald Trump, has been briefed on the situation there. He is calling it big news. And as well as here at home, New York City authorities, the police here are increasing security at some locations. We're also waiting on a statement from Scotland Yard on this UK Parliament attack. There's a lot of details that are still yet to be known here, but what we do know is that that car that was carrying the assailant that has reportedly been shot, and that's the latest according to the leader of the House of Commons, approached the House of Parliament from the south side of the Thames River. It then drove across the bridge. It is reportedly an SUV that traveled across the Westminster Bridge, apparently ran down several people. 2 people are now reported dead in this reported terror incident. Maybe on the west side of the bridge, we're learning, but there was a lot of pedestrians involved there on the bridge. He then crashed into a gated park across from Big Ben, then fled from the car with a knife. There are a lot of eyewitnesses of this incident, and this is what we are hearing. Scotland Yard is making a statement. Let's listen.
Counter-terrorism investigation is already underway. This is led by the Met's Counter-Terrorism Command. At this stage, I will confirm what we know has happened, but I will not speculate. We received a number of different reports, which included a person in the river, a car in collision with pedestrians, and a man armed with a knife. Officers were already in that location as part of routine policing. but immediately additional officers were sent to the scene, and that included firearms officers. We are working closely with the London Ambulance Service and the London Fire Brigade. I'd like to repeat our request for the public to avoid the following areas: Parliament Square, Whitehall, Westminster Bridge, Lambeth Bridge, Victoria Street up to the junction with Broadway, and the Victoria Embankment up to Embankment Tube Station. This is to allow emergency services to deal with this ongoing incident. There is an ongoing investigation being led by the Counter-Terrorism Command, and we would ask anybody who has images or film of the incident to pass those to the police. We know there are a number of casualties, including police officers, but at this stage we cannot confirm numbers or the nature of these injuries. Our response will be ongoing for some time, and it is important that we gather all possible information and evidence. Public safety is our top priority, and we are reviewing our policing stance across London and throughout the capital this afternoon. There will be additional officers on duty and deployed across the capital. I would like to ask the public to remain vigilant and let us know if they see anything suspicious that causes them concern, and if they do, to dial 999 immediately. The Acting Commissioner, Craig Mackey, is being treated as a significant witness, as he was at the scene when the incident started. Whilst he is not injured, it would be inappropriate for him to be here to talk about the incident at this stage. Our thoughts and his thoughts are with all of those involved and responding to that incident this evening. I would stress that if anyone has information about today's incident, they are urged to call 0800 789 321. And I would stress, if the public have any information or see anything suspicious, to dial 999 immediately.
At this stage, does the incident seem to be over?
I'm not going to speculate. You'll see the response that we've got here, officers responding. I want to stress that it's our priority to keep London safe. People going home this evening will see additional officers deployed, both armed and unarmed, across London in order to achieve that aim.
Gunshots fired, gunshots fired.
I've told you what information I have, and we will continue to keep you updated as we find things out. I'm not prepared to speculate. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to thank you very much for your time here this evening. I would absolutely stress to the public, one priority, working with our partners.
Okay, so armed and unarmed officers deployed to keep Londoners safe this evening is what we're being told. We also heard that several people have been injured, including police officers. No confirmation of fatalities, but Sky sources telling us that at least 2 people have died as a result of this terrorist incident right in the centre of London this afternoon. Mark White, our Home Affairs correspondent, has been monitoring what the police have had to say for us, is still with us. Mark, didn't give us that much.
No, I mean, in these incidents, the police certainly confirm the bare minimum of facts, but there was significant information in there as well in terms of this absolutely is now being treated as a terrorist incident, that it is, for all intents and purposes, still an ongoing incident. We have many officers still carrying out a systematic search of the palaces of Westminster, looking for any other attackers that might be there. Although we are working on the theory that there was one attacker armed with a knife, these are, by their very nature, fast-moving and confusing incidents, and it is possible there could be other people, and that's why the police, out of an abundance of caution, and because they've also seen many incidents and terrorist-related incidents in other cities around the world where you have multiple attackers and multiple scenes, they have to make sure that everything is locked down and safe. On the right of the picture there, Kay, are the officers from the Counter-Terrorism Specialist Firearms Command. They are part of SCO 19 firearms unit from the Metropolitan Police, but they are the elite. They train regularly to counter the threat of a terrorist attack, and they have been involved in these systematic searches at the palaces of Westminster. At the moment, what the police are doing clearly is to try to get on top of what has happened intelligence-wise. They want to establish whether this was a lone incident involving one attacker, or whether there could be multiple incidents, because again, we have seen just a year ago, in fact, this is the first anniversary of the devastating attacks in Brussels, that there wasn't just one scene. There was the bombing scene at the airport, and then there was another attack at a metro station across the city. So the police are mindful of that. They've seen this pattern before. So that's why you see, for instance, where Alistair Bunkle is at outside the London Eye, that big public gathered areas where many people gather get locked down as well, and they slowly but surely make sure these areas are safe. So that's why we're seeing this kind of approach by the emergency services and by the police. They also want Kay to send out a message of reassurance. They're dealing with this incident here, which is one terrorist incident, we believe, but it has three components. And the first component, of course, was that devastating attack on the bridge, where this car ploughed into up to a dozen people, we're told, on the bridge, resulting in some absolutely horrific injuries and the death, we believe, of one woman. Then the vehicle careered down the road into Parliament Square itself and smashed into the fence, the perimeter fence around the palaces of Westminster. Now, a source told me that there are other injured people from that scene as well, people that were on the pavement just at the spot where the vehicle smashed into the fence. And then, of course, we have the third incident that where the alleged attacker left the vehicle and managed somehow to wrestle his way through the gates there and into Old Palace Yard, in the grounds of the palaces of Westminster proper. And it was there that there was this confrontation with a police officer. That officer, we're told, was stabbed. At this stage, we don't have a condition on the officer, but a source told me that he was seriously injured. And also, we're told that the attacker himself was shot by a police officer. That attacker shot multiple times. We've seen a picture that is on the Mail Online website that shows the attacker, the alleged attacker, on a stretcher receiving CPR from paramedics as he's put into the back of an ambulance. Let's just remind ourselves of what Commander B.J. Harrington from the Metropolitan Police just said to us on the steps of New Scotland Yard just a couple of minutes ago.
To come through. Just to rest assured, we'll keep you informed what advice we're going to give as well. So please, let's just make the best we can of this horrible situation. But I will reassure you, as soon as I get something, I will come back to you. We can't go anywhere for the moment, so please, just let's see what we can do.
Well, let's bring in our Home Affairs correspondent, Mark White, who is in Westminster for us.
If you're just joining us here on Fox News, welcome to Happening Now. We're continuing to follow a developing breaking news situation of what's been described as a very serious incident that happened in London right before 3 p.m. their time, right before 11 a.m. our time Eastern. A very busy Wednesday, mid-afternoon, and the reports started to come in of shots fired at the government building, the Parliament building, right in the heart of London. What we first thought could perhaps be two different incidents looks like, at least according to the latest reports, as one. And I'll just briefly describe what we know, and quite frankly, we know very little. We don't have official numbers of those injured, although we do know there are many injuries at this time. What appears to have happened is a man described as middle-aged, drove over the Westminster Bridge, and while doing so, mowed down people on that bridge, leaving a trail of injured behind him. Then he crashes into a gate outside of this government building and proceeds to attack a police officer with a knife that's been described as 7 to 8 inches long. At that point, the man, according to reports, is shot by police. And quite frankly,
That's what we know at this point. The Prime Minister, Theresa May, was inside the Parliament building. She is said to be safe at this time. As you just heard live on our air, it looks like they're going to try to resume some semblance of business inside the building, although the building is in lockdown, as well as other journalists that are working, as you can imagine, as part of this government apparatus in London. We do not know at this point if this is a terrorist attack, although we do feel compelled to tell you that this is the anniversary of the terror attack in Belgium. We don't want to connect the two. We don't have that information, but the timing may or may not be significant, and that's why I'm mentioning it now. Bringing it back to the United States, the New York Police Department has just put out on their counterterrorism Twitter feed that they're monitoring the developing situation in London. That is key, as New York City is our biggest city in the country, and perhaps there could be repercussions. Again, we'll wait to hear more. Also, we see a report now that President Trump is being briefed on this developing situation in London as well. You're hearing from our sister network, Sky News. They are based in London, and they have some of the best sources in the business on this breaking news story, and we are going to rejoin them now as they continue to cover what, again, appears to be a very serious incident. No numbers of those injured, but definitely a big breaking news story today. Let's go ahead and rejoin Sky News.
Now, at this stage, we're just told that both the police officer and the attacker have been injured, and no further details on that. But again, images that we've seen from the area within the Old Palace Yard indicate a couple of people within there, one lying on the ground, one sitting up, and both being treated by paramedics at the scene. So we're talking about one incident from the information that we're getting from this source, but in three component parts: the mowing down of people on Westminster Bridge, the vehicle then speeding down into Parliament Square and crashing into the fence, the metal fence outside the Houses of Parliament, causing, we're told, some more casualties there. And then the incident inside, where one alleged attacker left the vehicle armed with a knife, headed into the Old Palace Yard, confronted by police officers, attacked and stabbed one of those officers, and then was shot by colleagues of that injured officer.
Mark, thanks very much.
Well, if you are just switching on, we'll try and recap some of the latest developments on this story. The police are now saying that they are treating this attack as a terrorist incident until, quote, we know otherwise. That's the latest from the Metropolitan Police. Robert Nisbet, our correspondent in Westminster, can join us now.
For how to move forward. Think of what it is that we are witnessing here. On television screens around the world, on every network that is a news network around the world,
There's no party like a lobster party, and this is the lobster party. Red Lobster.
police don't always carry weapons. But in this part of central London, around the heart of government, around Parliament there, right on the banks of the River Thames, they are very well armed, and they were today. And whoever this assailant was, after stabbing a number of people and taking his vehicle down the bridge, apparently, as the British authorities have put it, mowing down a number of people, many of whom are now in critical condition. That assailant was shot. Emergency workers seen giving CPR to that assailant. And now to find out who this was, what his motive is, and if he is working with any others on a day of terror in London. It's 1 o'clock on the East Coast, 10 a.m. on the West Coast, 5 p.m. now in London, and there is breaking news now on Fox News Channel. I'm Shepard Smith in New York. British police say they are treating today's attack in the heart of London as an act of terrorism, and that there are, quote, multiple casualties, including police officers. By that, they mean injuries. So far, there is no word on who the attacker was, what the suspect's motive may have been, or whether the attacker acted alone or with others. Here's what we do know at this moment. Investigators say police shot a man after the suspect stabbed an officer outside the British Parliament building. Witnesses say they heard multiple gunshots. Reports also indicate a driver mowed down people along the nearby Westminster Bridge over the River Thames. There is no indication whether that driver was the same person whom police shot outside the Parliament building, but the working theory at this moment seems to be that it is. Investigators have not said whether there was more than one attacker. In fact, they say simply that they're working to assess the situation, and all of central London is in lockdown. Our sister network, Sky News, based in the United Kingdom, reports 2 people are dead. Hospital officials earlier reported a woman had died, and some victims had what the British police call catastrophic injuries, which means in the United States Parliament, critical injuries. Officials put the British Parliament on lockdown after the attack, with lawmakers outside the building waiting to learn what had happened. The White House says officials have briefed President Trump on this attack. He was on camera for a very short period of time and said simply there is big news out of London, and then moved on with the day's affairs. Most likely the president had not been thoroughly briefed, and he didn't want to get ahead of the facts. The the U.S. press secretary for the White House, Sean Spicer, says, and American officials will continue to monitor this situation, but for this moment, that is about all we can do. Are there others involved? That's what the British police are working to determine even at this moment. Here in Bat 5, I want to show you the video that we have. This is from the scene on the bridge where it happened. Let's roll this. Maybe I have to roll it. Here we go.
Shot him, but it was running the nose. They shot him. The police was trying to get him, he came running down there. They get on with it.
So that was the moment when the shots were fired. If you remember, the London police investigator saying, from Scotland Yard, saying that the assailant was armed with a long knife. It's variously been described as a machete about 8 inches long. We believe that the shots were fired only by police officers at the assailant. We have nothing to indicate that the assailant had a weapon. I want to show you a few more things. This is a picture here as police rush to Parliament. This video from Sky News. Watch as they are on the move here, although I can't make this play for reasons that are beyond me. Let's see here. There we go. So that video is from a resident who had taken that photo. This is from the Parliament itself. Parliament was in session on Wednesdays. The Prime Minister comes to Parliament, answers questions, which can sometimes be a rather rowdy affair. It's covered on television stations there. After Prime Minister questions was over, all the members of Parliament who were still in session were kept on lockdown. Some of them said to have performed somewhat of heroic acts on the outside. This is from the London Eye, the big Ferris wheel there. And this is a picture taken by one of the people on there. And then this picture from a bridge. This is the picture from the bridge. You can see people hugging over here in the distance. Our sister network, Sky News in the United Kingdom, has made this the news of the day, and they are in non-stop coverage as we work now to find out what the motive was and whether any others are responsible. They are certainly treating this at the moment as an ongoing incident. No one allowed in or out. The bridge is shut down. Security extremely tight on the tube and, frankly, all over London. These are live pictures from Sky News' helicopter as it hovers over Parliament, and a correspondent on the ground. Let's listen.
Have been injured. We believe up to 3 officers injured, and that would make sense because this vehicle, having careered into people on Westminster Bridge, came round, we're told, into Parliament Square, smashed into the perimeter fence at the Palaces of Westminster, injuring a number of other people. And we understand there may have been a struggle with police officers and the attacker at that point outside the vehicle. And those, I think, a couple of officers were injured at that point. The attacker, we believe, managed to get into the Old Palace Yard where another officer was stabbed. So that is the information we have at the moment, that we're not just talking about one police officer, but we're talking about multiple officers, perhaps as many as 3, who were injured in the ongoing struggle with this assailant after he smashed into that wall on the perimeter of the Houses of Parliament, and as he struggled to try to get into the Palaces of Westminster proper.
Okay, Mark, for now, thank you. So what do we know so far? 2 people have died in a major terrorist attack here in central London. It began when a car was driven into pedestrians on Westminster Bridge. It sought the same car, then hit more people outside Parliament before the attacker entered the Palace of Westminster and stabbed at least 1 police officer. The assailant was then shot by armed officers, we're told, at least 3 times. Doctors say there may be many people hurt, some with catastrophic injuries. The Prime Minister, she was whisked away from the scene. Parliament remains on lockdown and tourists are trapped still on the London Eye. We're being told that there will be a PM-led Cobra meeting this evening, which means when all of the major security services get together with the Prime Minister to figure out what's happened and to decide what happens next. Just hearing there from Mark White that at least 3 police officers have been injured as a direct result of this terrorist incident today. Also hearing reports from French media. They're reporting that 3 of the injured are French students, is what they are telling us. We're also being told that, remarkably, a woman has been pulled alive from the River Thames. That's what we were hearing within the last few moments. That's breaking news here at Sky News. A woman has been pulled alive from the River Thames. Her condition, as you can imagine, having been in this freezing cold water in March, we need to move out of the way of the emergency services. Just come this way, Jason, and then we can see. There we go. Jason Farrell is here with me. Jason, a lot of police activity.
Yeah, I mean, so the scene, the pictures we're getting from the scene now, the kind of the attacks that have happened on this bridge, really, it's quite a horrific scene. The idea that a woman may have been hit, thrown over the bridge, landing in the river. We've got someone else who's fallen down the stairs, may have been hit by the car and fallen down the stairs and injured themselves that way. And obviously the number of fatalities appear to be rising. The numbers of injuries we're hearing about that are catastrophic, also extremely worrying. The police say they're still keeping an open mind on motive, but it is the anniversary of the attack in Brussels. It does bear the hallmarks of the kind of attacks we've seen in Nice and in Berlin, where someone's used a vehicle. Also, though, reminiscent of what happened with Lee Rigby, where someone's brought a knife with them along and attacked people of authority, such as the police.
Okay. For now, thanks so much. We're just hearing actually that MPs, I was telling you there's a lockdown, so we did actually see the deputy leader, didn't we? He was deputy speaker, I should say. He was asking all of MPs that were still in the chamber to stay in situ, as that was locked down, at least for the time being. Within the last few moments, we're hearing that MPs are being allowed to start leaving the Palace of Westminster and the chamber particularly. We're looking at a shot of Old Palace Yard as you are tuning our way here on Sky News, where one of the attackers, we're not sure whether it is the same person that drove that vehicle into the people who were on Westminster Bridge and subsequently into the railings at Big Ben or just below Big Ben. Not sure if it's the same person or not, but we do know that one person was stopped by police in Palace Yard, and those are the images that we're looking at just at the moment. As I mentioned a second ago, we are also expecting a Cobra meeting that will be chaired by the Prime Minister. That's coming up very shortly. We'll get information from that as soon as that has finished. Just tell us about Cobra, Jason.
Well, Cobra is something that is pulled together when there's an emergency. The Prime Minister might often respond to a terrorist attack, and has done on previous attacks abroad, just to make sure that all security measures are in place. Has something that has happened here changed the scene, changed the development? In fact, it's interesting that only earlier this month, Mark Rowley, who's the head of counter-terrorism, said that they had foiled 13 attacks since 2013, 13 terror attacks, and that they had 500 ongoing terror investigations, live investigations, and that they had had 22,000 calls from the public, which they said had helped them foil these attacks. That's just in the last year. And so there was this sense that there was a growing threat. They were worried about this kind of thing, whether it was a sophisticated attack which could involve multiple players and a large number of casualties, or something that you have to say this is rather more unsophisticated but nonetheless effective. It's nonetheless a very high profile target we're talking about, and it does obviously have a huge impact, and it has obviously caused fatalities, but it's nonetheless what you would call an unsophisticated attack, and that I think was one thing that they were worried about, because it's very, very difficult to see those coming.
Yeah, and there is an Achilles heel here at Westminster, isn't there? And it is that gate that we think that the car has ploughed into.
That gate, I mean, it does, if you walk along there, you've obviously got all those blocks to stop cars getting in and ramming the actual building itself. That gate is normally heavily policed, and what's interesting is it does open quite a lot, because that's where the ministerial cars go in and out. And when that happens, someone could run in, a car could try and ram in. You're right, that is a potential, the only really Achilles heel of the building, especially for someone in a car or a vehicle trying to get in. And it seems as if what's happened, from what we're hearing from Mark White now, is that the car has rammed into that area. They would have been confronted by police on the gate, because there are always police officers on the gate there.
Armed police officers.
And they're always armed. I mean, this is the other thing about this attack. I mean, if you are going to commit a terrorist attack in London and you want to be confronted by armed police, you do it here, because there are more proportion of armed police in Westminster than anywhere else in London. More security cameras. I mean, I remember filming one of the security cameras once, and police arrived instantly. They are always on high alert, and from everything we're hearing from the MPs inside the building and the journalists to people on the bridge, immediate response. This person could not have expected to survive this attack.
We're not sure what's happened to that person.
We're not sure, but they can't have expected to have come out uninjured. They couldn't have expected to come out uninjured.
Yeah.
And clearly they have been shot. And we heard eyewitnesses reports from MPs inside who heard the shooting, ran from the shooting. I understand Grant Shapps was quite close by. David Davis, the MP for Monmouth, heard the shooting and ran. Some people hit the floor. So this person got within reach, almost, of MPs, people of great importance within the building, but was stopped by the ring of police. Not quite on the perimeter, but certainly as soon as they got in. And there would have been plenty of police officers within that perimeter, because they know that is somewhere where people could try and get in.
Absolutely. And this is Wednesday, so it is Prime Minister's question time. The Prime Minister was actually within the Palace of Westminster as this attack happened.
Yeah,
and we believe that she was, as you would imagine, very, very quickly whisked away.
Yeah, she was moved out of the building. She was moved out of danger. What would happen is they'd go through the procedure to check to see whether anyone else had got into the building, because of course this could have been a distraction to try and help someone else get into. But as we say, the police are keeping an open mind. And one of the other interesting aspects that came out of the police press conference, which we're just about to hear, is that Deputy Commissioner Craig McKee was actually a witness to this. And he's quite a high, obviously Deputy Commissioner, he's quite high. He used to be the Commissioner of Cumbria, where, of course, Derek Bird went on the rampage. So he has full experience of this kind of thing, and it seems as if he was a witness of this attack.
Yeah, we're told that actually Craig McKee, as more ambulances go by now, as you can see from our live position, Craig McKee was actually here at the scene when this incident unfolded. We heard that from Scotland Yard just a short time ago. They held a news conference to update us, and this is what they had to say.
Since 2:40 this afternoon, the MPS has responded to an incident in the area of Parliament Square.
and the Senior National Coordinator has declared this a terrorist incident. And although we remain open-minded to the motive, a full counter-terrorism investigation is already underway. This is led by the Met's Counter-Terrorism Command. At this stage, I will confirm what we know has happened, but I will not speculate. We received a number of different reports, which included a person in the river, a car in collision with pedestrians, and a man armed with a knife. Officers were already in that location as part of routine policing, but immediately additional officers were sent to the scene, and that included firearms officers. We are working closely with the London Ambulance Service and the London Fire Brigade. I'd like to repeat our request for the public to avoid the following areas. Parliament Square.
So that from the British police just a few moments ago. We have new video in. This is of a witness as speaking to the BBC.
And they have bred amongst our younger people not just to be indoctrinated to one point of view, but to think the other point of view is unacceptable, should be protested against, and even should be banned. It is horrifying, horrifying. There are thousands of people on the streets of London tonight protesting against Donald J. Trump even visiting the United Kingdom. This young generation who scream words like fascist have actually themselves become the fascists.
Merci, Madame Merkel, de nous faire le plaisir de venir aujourd'hui avec votre vice-chancelier, administrateur de la province France.